This piece of meat has been called the queen of steaks, but there's a rival. Is this the steak that's going to kick the queen off her throne? I'm talking about the tri-tip.
Big thanks to Napoleon Grills for sponsoring this episode.
That's right. It's going to come down to the tri-tip to kick the queen off the throne. Or is it? Most of you know the queen of steaks, the picanha. It has delicious meat and a beautiful fat cap. And when you cook it right, it's juicy and tender. But the funny thing is that I can say the same thing for the tri-tip. It has a beautiful fat cap on top and it has delicious flavorful meat. And if it's cooked right, it's juicy and tender. But the question is, which one of these steaks is the best one? We're gonna figure this out once and for all. Let's get started. There's only one right way to cook picanha, and that is on a skewer over a fire. Therefore, you're going to take the picanha and you're going to cut it up into thick steaks. And to cut it, we have to cut it across the grain. Now the grain runs in this direction, and I'm going to cut it against the grain, put it with the grain on the skewer so that we can slice it off against the grain again. So against, with, and against. AWA. Look at that, what a beauty. You could try and apply the same thing to the tri-tip, but it's called a tri-tip for a good reason. The thread of the meat in this section runs in this direction, and here it runs in this direction. And at the tip, it just follows along. And that makes it a bit more challenging. The first thing that I'm going to do is cut the tip off. And look at that, how beautiful that meat is. Great intermuscular marbling. And once I got that off, straighten it up a little bit, and then cut it in half into two thick steaks, just like that. I'm going to show you that you can cook the tri-tip on a skewer just the same way you normally cook a picanha. But before I do that, I'm going to pick up the PITMASTERX skillet, put in a bunch of garlic, peeled garlic cloves I should say, and a twig of rosemary. To that I'm going to add 125 grams of butter and a drizzle of olive oil, about 2 tablespoons. The pan is going to go onto the sizzle zone. I'm slowly going to let that butter melt and turn the garlic super soft. Of course, I'm going to need to add some seasoning, so I'll add a little bit of PITMASTERX Texas seasoning, about 2 tablespoons. I'm going to take the rotisserie out of the barbecue and I'm going to skewer on the picanha. And the way you do that is you roll the picanha up like that with the fat cap on the outside, and then you're going to stick the skewer through the meat. I'm going to do the same thing for the tri-tip. There we go. Now the only thing that this is going to need is some seasoning, and that's going to be salt. Salt only. This is pyramid salt. It's very light. It's going to dissolve easy when it becomes wet. And I'm going to use it to sprinkle onto the fat cap. And I'm going to use a lot more than you think, because the fat is going to melt. And you need that salty crust. It's the character of the picanha. If you've ever eaten picanha in a restaurant, then you know, then the salty part is the magic. So just stick it on heavy, like that. If you want, you can do the size of the fat even. That is how much fat caps on these steaks. You don't need to put any of it on the meat side, because there's already plenty of salt on the fat. And if there just happens to be a little bit of salt, that's no problem. Most of it's gonna fall off. Now this can go on the barbecue. As you see, I'm using the Napoleon gas grill. What I'm going to do is I'm going to center the steaks right there. And behind the steak is the back burner. I'm going to ignite it. You see that the back burner is turning red. That's infrared heat. It is going to radiate onto the meat and then melt the fat, create a beautiful crust on the steaks. Because I'm not looking to cook the steaks, I'm just looking for a crunchy bit on the outside that I can slice off and then continue to grill until the whole steak is gone. If it's not going fast enough, I can close the lid, intensifying the infrared heat on the steak. Once the garlic is soft, and put it into a bowl with the butter and the olive oil. You're going to remove the rosemary and then you're going to mash the garlic until it's super soft. Until the caramelized garlic and brown butter look like a gravy. And then just set it aside so we can use it as a spread later, once the steak's finished. Alright, let's take a slice out of that picanha and do a taste test. Of course, I'm going to need a piece of steak with a little bit of fat cap. There we go, that looks good. Look at all the juices running. Look at all that fat rendering down. That is what it's all about. It's packed with flavor, this steak. Let's get another slice. You want to go as thin as you can on this steak when you're slicing it, because you want the best part. All right, hold that to one side. And now let's take a slice out of that tri-tip. A little bit of fat, a little bit of meat, a little bit of everything, come on. Yeah, baby. All right, time for that taste test. I'm gonna start with picanha. It is the main feature. It is the queen to beat. Let's go. It's got all the best features of a steak. First, you get that chewiness of the crust, like a little crunch. Then you're going to get a salty beef flavor explosion. And to finish it off, you're going to get extreme juiciness. It is everything that I love in a steak. And personally, to me, this is one of the best steaks you can get. So good. Now let's see if the tri-tip can stand up to the picanha, the queen. I love the tri-tip. It too is one of my favorite steaks. And you do get the same crunch and experience as you get with the picanha, and it's very much comparable, except it is not as tender as a picanha. It has a little bit more chew to it. Does that make it a bad steak? Most definitely not. Wow, it is still fantastic, but it cannot beat the queen. Now I'm going to show you what to do with that caramelized garlic and that brown butter. Just put some of that on top of that steak. And it's not going to be super garlicky. It's just going to be the satisfaction and the sweetness of garlic without that super heavy bite of garlic. Here we go. Hope you guys enjoyed this experiment. Personally, I did, because tri-tip is one of my absolute favorites, but it just doesn't stand up to the queen, the picanha. And honestly, I thought there would be less difference. But now, tasting them side by side in the same method, from the same type of cow, there definitely is a difference. See you guys. Cheers.